The most powerful voice in your life is not your teacher, not your parent, not even your mentor. It's the voice inside your own head. What you consistently say to yourself over time becomes your truth. Whether it empowers you or limits you, that internal dialogue shapes your beliefs, your behavior, and ultimately your identity. From the moment we wake up, we are talking to ourselves. It's not always loud. It's not always obvious, but it's there in the background, narrating how we see ourselves in the world. That voice tells us what we're capable of, what we deserve, and what's possible for us. And the problem is, most people don't realize just how negative and automatic that voice has become. It says things like, I'm not good enough. I always mess things up. No one really listens to me. I never follow through. These thoughts may feel small, casual, or harmless, but when repeated consistently, they dig deep. They don't just float around, they take root, and over time, they harden into beliefs. You start acting like someone who isn't good enough. You start making decisions based on fear of messing up. You start shrinking, hesitating, and playing small, not because you're incapable, but because you've told yourself a story so many times that it feels like fact. It becomes a mental habit. Self-sabotage wrapped in familiarity. On the flip side, when you deliberately change what you say to yourself, you can begin to change how you see yourself. It's not magic. It's mental conditioning, telling yourself, I am learning. I am growing. I can figure this out. I deserve to be here. Rewires how your brain responds to challenges. Over time, your self-image starts to catch up with your self-talk. But here's the key. It has to be consistent. You can't say something positive once and expect your entire mindset to shift. Just like going to the gym once won't get you in shape. Positive self-talk works through repetition. It takes showing up every day, especially on the hard days, especially when your old patterns try to creep back in. The way you talk to yourself during struggle matters. Anyone can be confident when everything's going well, but when you fall short, when you fail, when things feel heavy, that's when your words carry the most weight. Telling yourself, this doesn't define me, or I'm built for this, creates resilience. It trains your mind to respond with strength instead of shame. This isn't about lying to yourself or pretending everything's perfect. It's about speaking from a place of truth, the deeper truth that you are more than your past, more than your mistakes, more than the labels you've accepted. Because when you change the way you talk to yourself, you don't just feel better. You start moving differently, showing up differently, making choices that align with a higher version of who you are. The voice becomes your foundation. It becomes your internal compass. And over time, it becomes your identity, because most people don't realize that they live inside a loop, a mental loop that runs on autopilot from the moment they wake up. It starts with a single thought, often subtle and unnoticeable, like, I'm already behind. I didn't sleep enough. This day is going to be hard. That thought triggers a feeling, maybe stress, anxiety, or irritation, and that feeling reinforces another thought. I can't keep up. I'm not good at this. Why does this always happen to me? Before long, the loop has taken over, and it becomes the filter through which everything else is interpreted. This is the default negativity loop. It's automatic, unconscious, and deeply habitual. It's not that people choose to be negative. It's that over time, the brain gets trained to expect problems, doubt success, and anticipate failure. The mind starts scanning for what's wrong, what's missing, and what might go wrong next. And because the brain is always trying to confirm what it believes, it finds evidence to support the negative bias, even if that evidence is distorted or exaggerated. This loop becomes especially dangerous when it goes unchecked. A negative mindset doesn't just affect mood. It affects performance, relationships, decision-making, and even health. It influences how people show up to opportunities, how they respond to setbacks, and how they view their potential. And the worst part, most people think it's normal. They think it's just how they are, but it's not personality. It's programming. The loop often starts early in life. Maybe someone was criticized a lot. Maybe they failed once and never recovered. Maybe they were surrounded by people who focused more on what was wrong than what was possible. Over time, their internal dialogue started echoing that environment. And now, as adults, they carry that same script into every situation. Stopping the loop begins with awareness. You can't interrupt what you don't notice. When you catch yourself saying things like, "This is pointless," "I'm not good at this," or "Why bother?" Pause. Don't argue with the thought. Just recognize that it's part of a loop that has played out many times before. It's familiar, but it's not helpful. And it doesn't have to be true. Next, you need to replace it. The brain won't respond well to a blank space. It needs a new directive. So you deliberately feed it a different thought. Not something unrealistic, but something grounded and empowering. I've handled hard things before. I don't need to be perfect, just present. This is a chance to grow. It may feel awkward at first because the old loop is louder and more practiced, but with repetition, the new dialogue starts gaining traction. Consistency is more powerful than intensity. You don't need to say it with fireworks. Just say it often. Say it when you wake up. Say it when the doubt creeps in. Say it when your mind wants to slide back into old patterns, because every time you do, you weaken the old loop and strengthen a new one. You give your mind a different path to follow. And slowly, the default setting begins to change. Affirmations, when spoken without belief or feeling, are just empty words. You can repeat positive statements 100 times a day, but if they're whispered with hesitation, mumbled without emotion, or said out of obligation, they won't create any real shift. What gives affirmations their power isn't the words themselves. It's the energy behind them. It's the conviction in your voice and the emotion in your body that signals to your mind, this matters. This is true. This is who I am becoming. Most people misunderstand affirmations. They treat them like a checkbox. Stand in front of the mirror, say something nice, and hope something magical happens. But your mind doesn't respond to monotony. It responds to intensity, certainty, and repetition that carries weight. Think about how deeply you've believed negative thoughts in the past, not because they were true, but because they were repeated with emotion. You felt the fear, you felt the doubt, and that gave those thoughts strength. The same principle applies to positive affirmations. They need to be felt to take root. When you speak an affirmation, you're not just saying something to yourself, you're training your subconscious to believe it. But belief doesn't happen through logic alone. It happens through emotional association. The more you connect your affirmations to a powerful emotional state, the more your mind begins to accept them as familiar and real. Saying, "I am confident," while standing slouched, eyes down, and voice low sends a mixed signal. But saying, "I am confident," while standing tall, breathing deep, and speaking with energy tells your mind, this is the new standard. And conviction means you don't just say the words, you own them. Even if you don't fully believe the affirmation yet, you commit to the process of becoming the version of yourself who does. You speak it like someone who knows their identity is not fixed. Someone who's choosing growth, not comfort. There's a different energy that comes from affirming with that kind of determination. You don't wait for confidence to appear. You generate it with how you speak. Emotion fuels change. If you want your affirmations to create lasting impact, you have to bring your full presence to the moment. Don't just say, "I deserve success." Say it like someone who's done with settling. Say it like someone who's tired of living in the shadow of fear. Say it like someone who's had enough of the inner critic and is finally stepping into their voice. Let your tone reflect your decision. Let your body match your words. You don't need perfect grammar or poetic phrasing. You need truth. and you need fire. Affirmations are declarations, personal truths spoken into existence. When backed by emotion, they interrupt the mental patterns that keep you stuck. When spoken with conviction, they remind you of who you are, even when doubt is loud. And when repeated consistently with belief, they begin to rewire the story you live by every day, whether you're aware of it or not. You're in a constant conversation with yourself. Thoughts are always running. Questions, judge reminders, worries, reflections. This inner dialogue is what we call self-talk. And while it often feels automatic, it's not fixed. It's a habit. And like any habit, it can be trained, reshaped, and improved. Most people never pause to question the way they speak to themselves. They assume it's just their inner voice or their personality. But if you listen closely, you'll notice that much of this internal talk isn't helpful. It's critical, harsh, and often rooted in fear or comparison. It points out your flaws, replays your failures, and plants doubt in your mind before you even begin. What's worse is that this voice tends to speak with authority as if it's always telling the truth. Over time, it becomes a mental background track that influences your confidence, your choices, and your outcomes. The truth is nobody's born with negative self-talk. It's learned. It's absorbed from the people you grew up around, the environments you were shaped by, the experiences you've gone through, and the standards you've internalized. But because it's learned, it can also be unlearned. Just like you train your body in the gym or practice a new skill, you can train your mind to speak to you in a new way. One that builds instead of breaks, supports instead of shames. Training your self-talk starts with awareness. You can't change a habit you don't recognize. Start paying attention to what you say to yourself in moments of stress, failure, or uncertainty. Listen to the tone. Is it kind of cruel, encouraging, or dismissive? The goal isn't to judge yourself for having negative thoughts. It's to catch them, to recognize when the old programming is trying to run the show again. Once you're aware of the pattern, you can start replacing it. This is where the training begins. Instead of letting your mind default to, I can't do this, you intentionally say, I'm learning how to do this. Instead of, I always mess things up, you shift to, I make mistakes, but I grow from them. It may feel awkward at first, like writing with your non-dominant hand, but with repetition, the new dialogue becomes more natural. Training your self-talk doesn't mean pretending everything's perfect or ignoring reality. It means choosing language that helps you grow rather than holds you back. It means building a voice in your mind that you would want a loved one to have. And it means doing it over and over until it becomes second nature. Consistency is key. You don't train a habit once and expect it to last. You come back to it daily, in the quiet moments, in the challenges, in the small wins. Every time you choose a better thought, a more supportive phrase, a stronger belief, you're reinforcing the kind of inner voice you want to live with. The words you speak, especially the ones you say to yourself, are not just sounds or expressions. They are creative tools. Every word carries weight, direction, and influence. The way you talk about your life, your potential, your circumstances, and your future shapes how you perceive everything around you. Over time, your language builds your mindset, and your mindset builds your reality. Words are the bridge between thought and action. Before you move, you speak, even if only in your mind. You tell yourself whether something is possible or impossible, whether you're ready or not, whether you're good enough or falling short. That language creates internal momentum or resistance. It pushes you forward or pulls you back. The words you use frame every experience you have. If you constantly say, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, or I can't, your world begins to shrink around those limitations. You start seeing only what matches that narrative. This isn't about ignoring challenges or pretending life is easy. It's about understanding the power of what you declare. If you keep saying nothing ever works out for me, your brain starts filtering out the wins and focusing only on the setbacks. If you keep saying, I'm not the kind of person who succeeds, you begin to subconsciously behave in ways that align with that statement. It becomes a self-fulfilling cycle, not because it's true, but because you've so many times that your mind believes it's the only version of the story. On the other hand, when you start shifting your language, you start shifting your perception, saying, I'm figuring it out, instead of, I don't know what to do, gives your brain permission to look for solutions. Saying, this is a challenge I can grow through, instead of, this is too much for me, opens up creative thinking and resilience. Your words create an internal environment, and that environment either supports your growth or stunts it. Think about how different you feel when someone speaks life into you, when they remind you of your strength, your value, your potential. Those words have power because they carry belief. But even more powerful than someone else believing in you is when you begin to speak that way about yourself, when you become the source of encouragement instead of waiting for it, when you wake up and say, I have what it takes. Today I will make progress, or I choose to show up with purpose. Your internal world expands, and that expansion influences how you show up in the external world. The language you use daily becomes the story you live by, whether you realize it or not. You are always narrating your life, and the tone of that narration matters. Words like can, will, learning, and becoming carry energy that moves you forward. Words like never, never, can't, stuck, and hopeless quietly construct mental walls that are hard to break down. You are not just describing your world. You are designing it with the words you choose. You change doesn't always start with a massive overhaul. Sometimes it begins with a simple shift, a change in language, a change in tone, a change in how you respond to yourself when life gets difficult. For many people, their biggest obstacle isn't their circumstances. It's the way they speak to themselves about their circumstances. The inner dialogue running through their minds has become negative, automatic, and deeply familiar. But what if for just 3 days that inner voice was rewritten? 3 days might not seem like much, but it's long enough to interrupt the pattern, long enough to break the loop of self-criticism, doubt, and discouragement that keeps so many people stuck. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to speak to yourself with more intention. And when that choice is repeated consistently, even for a short burst of time, something begins to shift at a foundational level. Positive self-talk is not just a feel-good strategy. It's a tool for reprogramming the mind. The thoughts you choose, the tone you use, and the words you repeat start to rewire the pathways in your brain. Most people don't realize how much of their thinking is habitual. They think the same thoughts, say the same phrases, and live the same emotional experience every day without realizing they're reinforcing old beliefs with their language. By deliberately speaking to yourself with kindness, confidence, and purpose for just 3 days, you begin to create a contrast. You interrupt the default settings. You begin to notice how often the negative voice tries to creep in, and you learn that you have the power to replace it with something better. Even something as simple as shifting from, I can't do this, to, I'm learning how to do this, creates space for growth. It doesn't erase the challenge. It repositions your role in it. 3 days of this practice doesn't mean your life will instantly transform, but it's enough to awaken a new awareness. It's enough to show your mind that another way is possible. It's enough to feel the difference between your own enemy and being your own ally. And sometimes that feeling is all it takes to inspire a deeper commitment. During these 3 days, the goal is consistency, not perfection. You won't catch every negative thought. You won't feel confident every second. but you will begin to build momentum. You will begin to retrain your inner voice. You'll speak affirmations with energy, rewrite limiting beliefs, and become more intentional with how you direct your focus. The momentum created in those 3 days can spark lasting change because it breaks the pattern of unconscious thinking. It gives you a taste of what it feels like to speak with power, to lift yourself instead of tear yourself down, to look in the mirror and hear a voice that supports rather than sabotages. That experience can become a turning point, a reference point for what's possible when you choose to speak to yourself with intention, belief, and clarity. You don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to begin. For 3 days, speak to yourself like someone who matters, like someone who's worthy, like someone who's not finished, but becoming, because your words shape your focus shapes your actions, and your actions shape your future. You've lived long enough with the voice of doubt. You've listened to the critic, the fear, the guilt, the old programming long enough. It's time to train a new voice. A voice that builds, not breaks. A voice that calls out the potential instead of replaying the past. If you talk to yourself with power, with belief, with consistency, even for 3 days, you will begin to feel the shift. And once you feel it, you won't want to go back. That spark of self-respect, that internal momentum, that glimpse of who you really are when you speak life into yourself, it's real. It's yours. And it's waiting on the other side of a decision. So start now, because your next level is not waiting for permission. It's waiting for your voice to rise.